Welcome to part 1 of the Noun Classes webinar. So full disclosure, this is not the original recording because turns out during the session I forgot to hit record. Nonetheless, I promised you a recording, so I am doing a brand new one just so you can have something to refer to. So what exactly are noun classes? In Swahili, all nouns, that is names that describe things, are categorized into groups. These groups are known as the noun classes. So they shape everything in the Swahili grammar. They determine how we use a verb, so for instance, we have an example here, the goat fell versus the tree fell. If you look at the Swahili version, it says mbuzi alianguka. And for the tree, it says mti ulianguka. So you can tell that these sentences, even though they're almost the same in English, they look different in Swahili, and that's because of the noun classes. They also impact the way you talk about possession. So, for instance, my goat versus my cup, that will be mbuzi wangu versus kikombe changu. So, all of this end with angu. However, because of the noun that comes in front of it, they are going to look different. So, kikombe belongs to noun class 7 and mbuzi belongs to noun class 1. And also, these noun classes determine how you show association between two words. So the teacher's goat will become mbuzi wa mwalimu versus the teacher's cup, which will be kikombe cha mwalimu. So let us see how exactly they are going to be grouped. So there are two main groups of noun classes, that is the living things versus the non-living things. Non-living things groups are further broken into smaller subsections that are determined according to the different characteristics of the nouns found therein. So noun classes are also named in 3 different ways. The numeric format, in this instance we simply count them, noun class 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 18. And then we also have the subject prefix way. That means we use the subject prefix to label the noun class, and then we have the noun prefix way. So in just today's episode, we are going to be using the noun class. We're going to be using the noun class living things noun class. So since noun classes are at the heart of Swahili grammar, to understand them properly, we need to understand the verb structure. So in Swahili, the verb follows this pattern: STOV, subject prefix, tense, object infix, and verb. A good example here is mother is cooking for the baby. In Swahili, it's going to be mama anampikia mtoto. So don't worry about this. We're going to be breaking them down a little later, but this is just to introduce the different concepts that are affected by the noun classes. So to go over these concepts so that when you hear them later you're not confused: nouns, how we label things, cup, book, baby, all those things are things, and to label them we use nouns. Verbs, these are simply actions that in any sentence. Subject, this is the main actor in a sentence, the person who or the thing that is carrying out the action in the sentence. Object, if there's a recipient in that action, then you're going to be labeling that as an object. So English usually doesn't require subject prefixes and object infixes. Actually need to change that to an infix. Prefix because it comes in front of a word, and infix because it comes inside a word. So we show object in subject prefix is how we show the main actor in a verb, usually a letter or two, and an object infix is how we show the object in a verb, usually a letter or two. And then we have something called the noun prefix, really, which is the letter that we use to match the noun to an adjective. So it tells you where that letter or where that noun belongs, what noun class that belongs to. And then we also have demonstratives. What are demonstratives? Demonstratives are simply words that we use to point and show. This, that, that over there. And in Swahili, they are very important because this is where we get our subject prefix, this is where we get our object infixes also. So let us go back and try to understand the verb structure. So mother is cooking for the good baby. So mother is the subject, cooking is the verb, baby is the object. This is different from Swahili because in English it does not need prefixes and infixes. Now in Swahili that sentence will be mama, which is the subject, a, which is the subject prefix. This letter here is representing the subject, and then na is the tense, and then is the object infix. So this letter here tells you an object is coming, and then we have the verb. Mama, subject, a, subject prefix, na, tense. In this case, present tense. This never changes. If you're talking about a sentence in the present tense, it's just going to be na. And then that's going to be your infix. And then pikia is going to be your verb. In this case, actually, the verb for pika is cook is pika, but because there's an extension, it's going to be pikia, which means cook for. Mtoto, object, that is the beneficiary of the action of cooking, and then represents the mtoto in the verb. So we also have zuri, which is an adjective. An adjective is simply a word that we use to describe a noun. So in our sentence here we have mtoto mzuri. We have a good child. This has to match with this. And this is a characteristic of different noun classes. This letter here is going to change depending on what noun class that you're working with. So I hope that up to this point you're actually beginning to understand how all of these things work. So by way of review, noun classes are simply groups that nouns are put into depending on their different noun classes. So noun classes impact how we use verbs. And in Swahili verbs, the language is going to be, the formula is going to be stove, that is subject, tense, object, verb, and extension. Prefixes show us who the main actor is within a verb. Infixes tell us who the recipient of the action is within the verb. Prefixes match an adjective to the noun. And demonstrative help us indicate and figure out prefixes. So we are now just going to start looking at the different noun classes, and in this segment we're only going to do noun class 1 and 2 so that we can look at the different specific characteristics that it has. So it's also known as the 1-2 class, 1 being the singular and 2 being the plural, also known as the wa class, being the noun prefix and wa being the plural of the noun prefix. So like we talked about mtoto mzuri, watoto wazuri, and then it's also known as the a-wa class based on the subject prefixes. So we use a to indicate the subject and wa in the plural form. So this actually, just from the names, you can know how to talk about a certain word in the noun class 1 and 2. I just prefer the numbers just for the simplicity's sake. But if you want to use it as a cheat sheet, you can just call it the awa class or the mwa class. So like I mentioned, the second number or the second set of letters always indicates plurals. So all living things belong in this noun class, okay? All living things belong here. And trees in Swahili are not considered living things because they do not move from point A to point B, okay? So now that we know what those are, let us look at a few examples of words in this. So mama, okay, mwanafunzi, mbuzi, mtoto, mwalimu. So teacher, child or baby, goat, student, mother. Mama, mbuzi, mwanafunzi, mwalimu, mtoto. Okay, so let's try to learn a few words that we're going to be using to make sentences. Lisha for feed, cheza for play, fundisha for teach, and kimbia for run. Okay, so feed, play, teach, and run. So for noun class 1, just as a way of review, the prefix is going to be a, infix. The demonstrative this is huyu. The noun prefix, it's going to be and mine is going to be wangu, and the associative of, that is showing the relationship between two words, is going to be wa. We have a few examples here that we can use to demonstrate this point. This is my child. Huyu ni mtoto wangu. So this huyu, we bring it here. Ni is simply is, and then my, wangu, and then mtoto. So this is a pattern. Maybe you will learn about Swahili. So nouns come first, and then mine or possessions comes later. Let us try that again. This is my goat. Huyu ni mbuzi wangu. Again, huyu ni mbuzi. So if you remember from the webinar, we were talking about some words not really beginning with the following the same pattern of mbuzi and wambuzi. So there's some words, even though the general rule is once they belong to this noun class, they should start with m in the singular and then wa in the plural. Not all of the nouns in this class behave like that. So you might find exceptions, and mbuzi is another one because it still remains mbuzi even in plural form. So this is the teacher's goat. Huyu ni mbuzi wa mwalimu. This teacher is tall. Mwalimu huyu ni mrefu. Why is it mrefu? The word for tall itself is simply refu, but then we have to match it. So the noun prefix is going to be and that's what's going to match it. Next sentence. The child is playing. Mtoto huyu anacheza. A, subject prefix. Na, tense, and then your verb, cheza. So here is really simple. Subject, tense, verb. Okay? Another one. Mother is feeding the child. So in this case, we have an object. So we're going to be using an object infix. Mama, subject, present tense, for object infix, mtoto. So when do you use an object infix, or when do you leave it out? A good clue is if you don't have a noun back here, then you don't need it. But if you do, you most probably need to include it in there. Okay? So because mtoto is a living thing, we're going to use the object infix for it. And then finally we have the teacher is teaching. Mwalimu anafundisha. So because we don't have anybody that he's teaching, we don't need to include that. But if we had a sentence like I used earlier, the teacher is teaching a student. So that sentence would be mwalimu anamfundisha mwanafunzi. Okay? So, and finally, let us look at plural or noun class 2, otherwise known as the wa. So, these are my children. We follow the same rules. Hawa ni watoto wangu. Okay? These are my goats. Hawa ni mbuzi wangu. These teachers are tall. Walimu, so notice this has become WA. So this is a proper mwa class. So walimu has become walimu. So walimu hawa ni warefu. Again, refu, but then we need the noun prefix, which is wa. And then we have they are feeding the children. Wa na wa lisha watoto. Because we have watoto here, we definitely need wa in there. Another example. They are teaching the students. Wa for subject prefix, na for present tense, wa because we have watoto, we need that infix, and then wafundisha watoto. And finally, these are the teacher's goats. Hawa ni mbuzi wa walimu. So sometimes you'll see walimu, then sometimes you'll see walimu. Same variation, both are fine. So this is just a brief review of everything that we talked about during the webinar. And once again, I apologize, I forgot to hit record, but I hope that this quick overview helps maintain a few important aspects of our discussion in your minds. As usual, I'm always available to answer any questions you might have. So I hope you found the webinar useful.